Here we are. Here we go. So we are going to talk about effective speaking and writing and strategies and a lot of the things. As you might know, I'm Alena Khvarova. I'm an ELT consultant for National Geographic Learning in Linguist Company. If you see me for the first time, very nice to meet you. Okay, so let's break into the points, today's session that we are going to have. First of all, we are going to talk about the strategies, how to boost students' speaking and writing confidence, their skills. We will cover the topic of creating a safe environment and how important it is to have in the English speaking classroom. We're going to talk about practical activity for both speaking and writing, and effective feedback techniques, which is an important thing to talk about if we talk about speaking and writing, of course. Okay, so the speaking part will be first, and then we will dive into the writing part. Okay, so when it comes to speaking, I have some personal favorites I like talking about, and I'm gonna share my personal experience of what I do in the classroom and what works well for me. I hope this will be helpful for you too. Okay, so first thing that I usually start with, I make sure that my students and most of my students obviously, we have a safe speaking environment. Safe speaking environment provides you with a variety of different stuff. And the most important is that your students will be able to talk and not be afraid to make mistakes. And if we are to talk about different approaches, we usually start with this one thing. None approaches will be working if we do not create the safe environment for our students to speak. So to do this, I usually have the three easy rules, three easy steps I follow. First one is mistakes are welcome in the classroom. Specifically, I always tell my students that the mistake you've made, it doesn't mean that you're stupid or dumb. None of this. No, the mistake you've made is the opportunity for us to grow. Now I know what we can work with and how I can help you. So, there is no pressure for my students when they make mistakes, and, and they know that this is okay, because that's what I need to understand how to move on in our further learning, right? The second thing, which is also important for me, is low pressure activities, especially in the beginning of the lesson. So I never start a lesson with a game. Never have I ever, or something that fancy, because for the beginning of the lesson, my very important thing is to make sure they will start speaking with me. So this requires low pressure activities. What I usually do, I ask my students questions about themselves. Do not underestimate the power of asking questions. It's huge in my opinion, because I'm sure you know your students. I know mine. And I ask my students, like, how did your competition go? Because I know that my students was taking part in a competition, which was very important to him or her. Or so, how did the week go? Things like this, You can always bring some questions from the grammar you've learned before. Like, for example, the other day, my students and I, we had this difference between be used to and get used to. Yeah, and the next lesson, I just started asking them, so were you actually used to getting up so early in the morning before you started, like, going to school or going to university or this job, And do you think you will get used to this new diet of yours? Yeah, so it's very important to bring this low pressure activities like questions. AI can always help you with creating these questions. Like, for example, you type in AI, like, help me with this thing. I need to create questions for my student for the beginning of the lesson. Prior to the lesson, we studied this, and that. And if you don't have creativity, don't worry. We have, ChatGPT or any type of AI which can help you really well. But if you do know your students, it will be an easy task for you. And the other thing I also want to talk about is the supportive environment. By supportive environment, what I mean that you are the example to your students, to your classroom. You will have one student, okay, that the mistakes are welcome. This is a great rule. But if you have 2, 3, 4 students, the environment that you are going to have in a classroom is extremely important. Especially your students will look at you and they will just read how you react, how you respond to other students' mistakes or their speaking process. And if you show enough empathy and understanding and being grateful for them to be able to share their experience with you, other students will also use this, and the environment in your classroom will be supportive and great, and it is amazing. Just to bear in mind that we are nowadays not only English language teachers, we are also teaching them how to be empathetic towards each other, which is extremely important nowadays, you know. So that's how I usually create safe environment for my students. And the next step for me is speaking activities, and I like to bring lexical chunks into the classroom. By lexical chunks, we mean phrasal verbs, idioms, all these fixed phrases with particular prepositions, all the things, yeah? And there is these questions like, why lexical chunks are important, right? And the easy answer is, it's just right here. If we want to help our students speak more naturally, we provide ready-made phrases for communication situation, which is true. It is absolutely true. But let me ask you this question. Have you ever had a situation in your lesson when your student was trying to make a joke and it became a complete disaster in the end? Because the student was just translating, one joke from Ukrainian language into English language. In a good day, it's just fun and it doesn't make any sense. In a bad day, that can be very inappropriate. I'm sorry. Yeah, so that happened to me. If that happens to you, I'm really sorry that you've experienced this. But there is also this case when you have adult students, and usually when they speak in Ukrainian, their capacity of speaking in Ukrainian, their language is more advanced than, for example, students who go to school or some of the university students too, and they want to bring it into English too. They want to speak the same way. They want to have this beautiful language, in English too, this beautiful phrases. I have these things with my students, these phrases, like when my other student was telling me about her relationship with her family or with her son or something, and she told me this, he's just shaking my nerves. I'm like, okay, I need to find where specifically I have this idiom with the getting on my nerves phrase. Okay, got it. Also, another of my students was giving an example. Oh, I was a golden child. My parents didn't have problems with me. Nice, but you wanted to say something like as good as gold. Yeah, so that's the thing. That's why I think lexical chunks are important. It was giving me, headaches when my students, tried to say something like this and they were just translating it. There is no use of translating something that we've created in our own language, and the same way it works in English, and you are well aware of that. So I tell them how important it is to know chunks, and usually I break it into 3 activities that my students endure, and I'm gonna share these activities with you. So the first one is role playing, using these chunks. When you use these chunks in role play dialogues or when there is a group activity with your students, it is extremely important because your students, they will go to a grocery store, grocery shopping, or to the chemist or pharmacy, anything like that. And if they already practice this with their peers, it's going to be much easier for them to have the same conversation when they are in real world, right? So this goes well, and also students can make fun from one another doing this. My second one is also, it's one of my some of my students, especially school students, high schoolers, is one of the favorite activities they do. So we start learning this, idiomatic language, like some idioms or some phrasal verbs. For example, there were like a lesson where we studied, like this medical phrasal verbs like pass out, throw up, and stuff like this. Sorry for bringing it up here. But so I give them these phrases, and we do some exercises, and I ask them to create a story. Yeah, the power of storytelling is also important here. And when they create this fictional, of course, not real story, but sometimes it's fictional, sometimes if they want, they can share their own experience. But they like creating these fictional stories. And what trick it does that the students memorize these phrases better when they create the story, but they also understand the meaning of this phrase because, like giving it like a real situation or almost real situation helps them understand it better. And last one is we maybe some people don't do this, and I'm not judging anyway, but I actually like to check if we have the same phrase, not all the time, but I like to check if we have the same idiom or the same phrase in our native language. Why I do this? Because, like, for example, with this golden child, I thought, okay, so we don't say this, we say as good as gold. Not shaking, not doing like nothing like this with the nerves. It's like it's getting on my nerves. And we just see the difference between the languages. It's like when you have two examples of the same thing but written in different words, it basically shows that you cannot translate one thing into another, even though you really would like to do that. And sometimes when the phrases that we have, they are identical. Oh my gosh, this is lucky day for my students and for yours probably too. They're like, finally, there is something in this English to make it easier for me to study. So lexical chunks are welcome. If you use them, that's good. If you don't, these are the activities I usually have in my classrooms when I present them with vocabulary. So the one is the example from New Close Up B1 plus level. What I like about this book is that it provides me with, for example, in each unit, we have one particular topic, and vocabulary covers everything from separate phrases to idioms and all this lexical chunks about one specific topic, and I like it so much. For outcomes, the third edition, also I like what Hugh Deller does. Hugh Deller is the author of this book. It's just have a look at this exercise. If you want to go shopping, the variety of phrases you need to use, and they are all here, and you can use like one verb for this and this situation. Yes, you can use one noun in this and this and this phrase. It's very good. It helps my students to get as much as they can and to understand how it actually works. So feel free to use them. It's very good and it's effective. Okay, the next thing, for me, it's also very important to bring authentic content in the classroom. Yes. And what I always make sure that I have authentic articles, videos, and listening in the book. Why it is important for speaking? This is important for speaking because they can experience and see with their own eyes and hear with their own ears that this is what the native speakers actually use. Of course, you can say go and watch an episode of Friends, but come on, we don't do this. We are here as teachers not to do this. So I make sure that there are authentic articles because our students can't be fooled anymore with this faked up conversations, And what I like in National Geographic Learning is that 100% of everything is real life content. So your students, they see the articles which are authentic. They read about real life experiences. They listen to these amazing tracks with how we actually use the same phrases. What I like about our publishing house is that you've learned the vocabulary, you hear this in the listening task, which is next to the vocabulary, yeah, and you're able to hear how people actually use this. And videos also, like real life important people talking about what comes to their mind, their real life issues and things like that. And this helps with cultural exchange. Yes, our students can compare our life and their life, like our tradition and their tradition, and we can learn from each other this way. And it is very important, and I think it's one of the most amazing things that people usually don't think about. But I've noticed that my students actually, they pay attention to what they hear, and they pay attention to what they read. And if they see what we've done prior to this in the text, or they hear it, it boosts their knowledge 100% more. And when it's not faked up, when everything is authentic, they they understand it better, they like it better. And when somebody is lying to you, you're not willing to listen or take something from this person. The same way it goes here, just the same way. Okay, so authentic content comes next, and then a couple of ideas for pair a group work activities for speaking. So there are three things that I usually do. The first one is a think, pair, share. It's for the classrooms where you have 4, 5, 6 students. You can, of course, like redo it for like individual work, or like even 2 students, it will be good. But what this activity has is like we reflect individually. It allows us to have some thinking time, which is sometimes crucial. Students are individual. For some students, it is very crucial before they start speaking to have some thinking time. So if you know the student is like that, please just do this. Reflect individually, discuss in pairs after this, and then you can finally share with the class or with the teacher if you have 2 students in the classroom. Small group debates works really well for teachers who have like 20, 15, 10 students in the classroom. You can assign like roles, you can give any task, and it will be really good to work in a small group and discuss and listen to others, and say what you think. Role playing, as we've already discussed, is a powerful tool when you simulate real life situations, and you practice communication skills before your student goes to real world and speaks there. It's very good even for individual lessons. When you know your student really well, and you know that the student is going to move to the UK, and the first conversation will be in the coffee shop, and you practice this conversation before the person goes into a coffee shop, just to avoid this first shock of communication. So highly recommend role playing in the classroom. If it's a bigger classroom, it's very fun. If it's a student who is going to move to another country, it's crucial to have these conversations, to avoid this shock, as I've already said. And we are going to talk about feedback. So when we talk about speaking, when we talk about even writing, feedback, but we will talk about writing later. Feedback is very important. And I have this rule about feedback. The rule is that communication always comes first. What that means? There are these 3 easy things I always focus on when I bear in mind that communication comes first. I always focus on fluency. This is number 1. So we do not, of course, we want to, like, every time we hear our student is making a mistake, we're like, no, we don't say this. But yeah, we all think that there is nothing wrong about it. I know, I do the same thing, but I do not say this out loud. I do not interrupt my students. So I focus on fluency of how well I got the message of what the student was telling. Yeah, if I got the message, it's good. So I do not focus on mistake. I prioritize the whole message. The second thing, I have this thing, and I usually write some notes when my student is talking and making a mistake, for example. And the third thing is very important. Like you've noted all the mistakes, right? And now it's very important how to tell a student about this. Yeah. So this will be in our next slide, but yeah, you encourage self-correction to a student, like you do not need to jump in with the "you've made a mistake, we don't say this and that." An example from my lesson a couple of days ago. So my student said something like, "I am start jogging every morning because la 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 la." So I asked her the question. So you say, "I am start jogging every morning. Is everything all right with this sentence?" And she was like, it doesn't it does sound a little bit weird, but I don't know why. I'm like, okay, how many verbs do you have in this sentence? Yeah, so you don't say, like, we do not say am with the start, you have a verb. Just ask again. The power of asking a question here also works. You just what's this word, you just lead your student to, um, to realizing what went wrong, because mostly your students, they know, but they were just, in this flow of speaking and they didn't notice this. So yeah, that's the thing. Self-correction comes first too. You do not say at once when the student doesn't understand what went wrong. Of course, then you say this, but just try, this approach first and then say what went wrong. And when I told you that it is very important to know how to say it, so you've noticed, you've taken some notes, and you need to tell your student that the student has the mistake. How to do this? So there is this sandwich rule, people call it, and the sandwich rule says that we have to give some positive the feedback, then constructive, then positive. When it means positive, constructive, and positive, it means that, for example, what I do: "Thank you so much for sharing your information about how you usually spend your morning routine," or, for example, what your preferences are about this, and that. But you have this sentence, and I want to make sure if it's okay. And I give the sentence that we've discussed, yeah. And then I'm like, the student, we discussed the mistake, yeah. And then I'm like, "It's very nice that you've noticed this mistake. It means that you're growing in English. When you can see this, you're growing. It's very nice. Or the mistake you've made, it's very good because we can focus on this, and this. And you just need to make sure you remember this for your further conversations." Just be positive, then constructive, then positive. It actually works really well, not only in your English lessons. It actually works really well in your personal life too. Check this, like this. Highly recommend this. Okay, so this is about how I give the feedback. Yeah. So we are going to jump into a writing part, not to take a lot of your time. So with the speaking, I gave you everything I had. The space environment, the lexical chunks, how to give feedback, the activities I usually use. Hope this will be helpful. But now let's talk about the writing part too. Okay, so with writing, writing is considered to be one of the most difficult parts when it comes to learning English. Not by me. I do personally adore writing, but the results from ZNO from a couple of years ago, they were real poor. Like our students were not able to, Ukrainian students, I mean, they were not able to write really well. Like the majority of students basically failed the writing task. And why this is like this? Why is it happening? You can you can type your answers in the chat, which will be very welcome. Unfortunately, I cannot see them because I'm showcasing you this presentation. I don't know why. It just happened like this. But for me personally, I think this is because our students spend so much time in just their phones, just chatting with their friends. So the writing activities that we have in our textbooks, they just don't work for them, and they don't pay this much attention to writing because it's, in their opinion, it's useless. So I had this question: okay, so how do I explain my students that writing is actually a good thing? Because writing gives us so many crucial things. In my opinion, writing allows people to structure their thoughts, right? have you noticed that when you write something, yeah, you you prioritize what you're going to say. You make it sound, like it goes, like, it, like it flows. It's just it's when we talk, especially me, I just talk. I do not think that much, unfortunately. But when I write, I do actually have this analysis in my head. This is the same thing that our students will have, and it's our job to show them that writing is actually a good thing. So have a couple of ideas on those. Okay, so with the writing, the first step for me is to define the purpose. So usually we have these two types of writing, whether we are going to prepare for a test, like it's a Cambridge exam, it's DNO, it's NMT. Oh, no, in NMT we don't have writing, sorry, just erase this. And DNO or IELTS, anything. And then we have this communication in real life. Writing is also communication. Like when you look at your inbox, you see the letters, you need to reply to these letters. This is communication. This is still communication. And we need to show this to our students. So when we define purpose of this task, if it's a letter, an email to a friend, or if it's like a mail to a colleague or something, with students who work, it's very easy to explain this because they already know that they will have to do this. With younger students, school students, and like, they don't actually see the purpose in this. So what I do, I open my inbox. Hopefully my English speaking colleagues do not hear this, and I show them the correspondence with me and my colleagues from abroad, and I'm like, that's what you're going to do if you're going to work in an international company. That's it. That's it. If you know how to do this, the sooner you know, the better your skill will become. The better your skill is going to be. So I do this, and for exams, of course, they, like, we just break it into all the steps that you're going to have this, and this part of the exam, and we need to prepare for this. And there is also such thing as writing articles, essays, and so on, and how to explain students that they have to do this too. So usually, because I think I am a tricky teacher, prior to saying that we are going to have a writing lesson, I ask my students about something they like doing. And I ask them, for example, could you say why you like playing computer games? They tell me. And then I do this. Could you explain me in Ukrainian, if somebody forbids you to play computer games, what would you do? And there the conversation goes. And then I ask them like a question, and I ask them, for example, to write down the answer. But this is the next step. First of all, I ask them these two questions, yeah, and there is the difference between what they say in English, especially in lower levels, and with what they say in Ukrainian. The Ukrainian version is just a little bit, more advanced. And I ask them to write down their answer to a next question. And it happens like this. The Ukrainian answer is the best. Then there is the written answer when they had this thinking time. And then there is this, like oral answer when they just said me out loud the first thing that comes to their mind. And I actually show them that when they have this time for thinking, when they know how to write their answer, when they, when they write it on paper, it allows them to have this structure in their thoughts again. And it will help them in the future to speak better, to know their priorities, what comes first in all this even speaking processes. It is a skill. It is a skill, and once my students understand that this is an important skill, then we can move on. So we have a look at the task, and we know what to do with this task, how it will be. How relatable it will be to our life. I always try to bring it to their life, because other way they are just going to do some awful work. Let's say it like this. Then we always set criteria. Our students, they need to know what they are being tested on, because if not, it's just blank to them. They don't know what to do. They just don't know what to do. So if you have the exam, you specifically know the criteria, right? And you show this to your students, and you say that this is what examiner is looking for while checking your task. With an article or with something else, again, we have this task, and we have specific criteria for our what the person that is going to read this email or article or essay will be looking for. We share this with learners, like we share the ideas, we brainstorm how to accomplish as much as we can in these criterias, how to do this and this. And for these two steps, I like bringing up examples. Make sure your book has examples in it in the writing part. It's extremely important, because when you're setting the criteria, you look at the task. This is an example for analysis. You look at the task, you have all the work done with your students, you discuss it, you have this example where the students wrote an article or an essay or something. You analyze it with your students. I like playing a game with my students where I ask them to be the examiner. It helps, the understanding of setting the criteria much better, because when they are analyzing it like an examiner, it gives them a clearer understanding of what they need to do further. So they are like these fancy examiners who are like, so we have this criteria, we need to do this and this, the amount of words, done, the language, polite, impolite, done, the question, the 3 questions we have here, done, paragraphs, clear, nice, linking words and linking phrases, done. Then they're like, what else I didn't mention? So they are like these fancy dudes who are like trying to be examiners, and this is real fun. But what it actually does, it helps them to be their own examiners when they are writing. So for me, it's crucial to have this example for analysis. And then we, of course, we plan orally with them, and they then after the brainstorming, they write down this plan. And also my recommendation will be, if for like beginners, elementaries, for your learners, like even B1 learners who are trying to in the beginning, it's always a good idea to have plans in the book written for them, because they are not that good at making plans, at creating these plans. It's very good if you have them in the book. Just make sure you have them, and then it's a next step to for them to create them. So if they have these plans, we can analyze it. Also very helps if you have useful language, because sometimes they want to get rid of one phrase and use something different to make them special and these things. So make sure you have all of those, because the work you do prior to writing is extremely important. So again, we analyze, we are the examiners, then we create the plan and everything. And it's the majority of the lesson, it comes to the analysis before they actually start writing. And I've noticed that one of the most difficult things for students is actually that they don't know what to do. The unknown, it's what actually terrifies students. And once they've done all this work and they definitely know what to do, then the writing comes. But when we write, and how to assess this, so the 3 main stages that go for writing that we need to come in our mind. So we share the ideas. It's like 40 or so it's like 60% of your time, this brainstorming, this like when you prepare, because everything that was unknown for them should be clear as day, so they definitely know what to do. Because when it goes to the task, to completing the task, they already need to know everything. So they will be just writing their best, their best essay or article or something. And then a very important thing, when they are examiners or when you are the one who checks their writing, you have to use only agreed criteria. Because if something comes up and you haven't discussed this is not fair towards your students. Please don't do this. So if you agreed on this criteria, and when I say this, share ideas and this brainstorming is like 60% of everything that you need to do, it is true, maybe even 70. When I say this is important because the unknown becomes known for them. And when something suddenly pops up that they even couldn't think of, ooh, that's not good. That's not good. So be sure that everything for the writing goes in the first stage of this process. And then when they do this criteria, when they assess based on criteria, when you assess based on criteria, and I always do this, I try to have some time with my students when we have this next lesson, and I use the same criteria as we had the previous lesson. Oh yeah, and I just do this, check in, and I just like, done, nice work. And I always, if they come up with something creative, I'm like, the other day there was my student Kate, and she started this writing. We were writing an article, and she started this writing with an amazing sentence, and I was just out of my mind. I said, Kate, you're so creative. This is very nice. And I said that it's actually a good idea to bring something like this in the sentence, in the first sentence of your like first paragraph. So think about this idea for your future writing. It's very good. It will do the work perfectly well. Okay, so but this thing is actually what irritates my students. So they've done their first writing, yeah, and I'm like, this is nice, this is good, but we are going to have the second one. I always repeat the right, okay, not always, but the majority of the time, we have writing 2 times. Even though the first writing is good, if we want to master the skill, we have to master the skill. Yeah. So second writing is very important because first writing, they do it. Then there is your feedback on writing, which is the same way as it was, and as we discussed with the communication. The sandwich rule, always the sandwich rule. The feedback was done, and then they have this opportunity to correct everything with the same type of writing, but maybe some new topic or something like this. And then it's just a masterpiece. And I actually have lots of my students writing in a separate portfolio, in a separate, like folder. And sometimes I show them what they've done like a year or 2 years ago, and they're like, was it me who did this? I cannot believe it. And yeah, it's also nice. It's also some sentimental time or something like this, Okay, twice. Writing, this is twice. Master the skill. Okay, and there is the thing. This is important for me to choose the good material when I want my students to be productive. Writing and speaking are crucial things because it actually shows what they've learned, how they can produce this. And when you choose the book, just make sure that everything you have in this book is will be helpful for you. The first thing I do is I look at writing in the course book when I choose it, because I really want to make sure this is not a difficult part for my students. This is the first thing I do, and I always look at how the vocabulary part, is done in the book, whether we have clear outcomes, But if in the book there is no good writing part, there is a possibility, a very huge possibility, that I'm not choosing this book. Because what it gives, when you give the writing task not from the internet and from the book, first of all, the familiar context reduces the anxiety from students, because writings are usually related to what you've learned before, so you're able to use the vocabulary and the grammar from previous units. Also, what I like about course books, not the internet or something, is that this is age appropriate. So there is nothing that they don't need to write about, or they have no idea how to write about it. Yeah. So it's very important. And for this particular stage, I always tell teachers that evaluate your students, evaluate their level like 100%. You have to be sure, because if with writing, it's extremely important. If you want your students, to take a book which is a little bit higher to their level, it's going to do a poor work in your writing, because sometimes it can be not as appropriate by age, because they just don't know. For example, students in school, they just don't know how to write an opinion essay about global warming. It's just not in their interests. And reinforcement, of course, repeating and learning everything we've done, and when it works as as the same mechanism, it's nice, it's good, we like this. So that's pretty much it. And I want to tell you that we actually have a contest in National Geographic Learning. And feel free to find more information about this contest. You can find out a lot of things about this. You can just scan the QR code. These are my contact details. If you want to ask me about anything, feel free to do so. I'm not sure if we have some time for questions, but if you have those, please feel free to do this.
We already very, very late. Yes, but nevertheless, we still have some time for questions. I know that the chat was not really working for you, so please let's do a skimming quick of it. Great pleasure. A lot of thanks. How do you combine books with texts and exercises alone to speaking practice, communication? Maybe there is a video lesson on YouTube, like an example. So how do you combine?
Can we get back to the beginning of the question, please?
How do you combine books with text and exercises along with speaking practice, communication? So how to combine the textbook and communication?
Well, usually
any videos how to do it?
Yeah, well, we can have a session if you want. Like, we can have a look at particular books I use, and I'm going to show you some practical techniques. But basically, what I've told you, the exercises that I do, the type of group work and pair work and everything that I do, and I just make sure that there is the information that I need in the textbook, the information I can work with in the speaking lesson. Like, for example, I always look for when there is vocabulary or grammar exercise. I always look for this part where we have like discuss this, and this after this, because everything should lead to communicational practice. So in the books, there should be a thing where there is a particular part for the conversational practice after everything. If not, please use AI, a GPT chat or something, and give the instructions to the GPT chat and ask to create a communication activity based on this information, and see how it goes. Can also be well.